All right. Another GMologist presents. Today I will be talking about games that I played at North Texas RPG Con and a game that I ran, Iron Kingdoms 5e, and character creation and Warhammer Fantasy role-playing. I think not this podcast, but maybe another one, we'll talk about my experiences with Kevin Madison in his marathon. But here we go. But before we get into all of that, some call-ins and responses to these call-ins. Thank you guys for calling.
Oh, I see how the musical thing goes, I think. We're giving you the band name, right? So, my 5 guesses are Death Clock, Death Clock, Death Clock, Death Clock, Iron Maiden.
Oh my, I knew you would just keep answering Death Clock. And I think it asked for artist and song name, but that's okay. I guess I want to do this contest, but you know how it goes. Sometimes no one wants to play.
Hey Carl, this is BJ from from the Arcane Alienist podcast. I just finished your first couple of episodes, great episodes. Welcome to the world of podcasting. I'd say welcome to Anchor, but I think you've probably actually been around here longer than I have as a frequent caller to other people's podcasts. Anyway, good stuff. Keep it up. And you mentioned the flying saucer in San Antonio. I have not been to the one in San Antonio because I haven't been to San Antonio in a long time, since I was a kid. But I did used to frequent the one in Memphis, Tennessee when I lived there. It was a great place to hang out. So it was interesting to hear you mention a flying saucer. Anyway, take care. Looking forward to the next episode.
Ah, yes, flying saucer. We've been going there, my wife and I feel, for a while, maybe 10 years, maybe longer. We're definitely UFO members and beer nerds and MOUs, and we've even gotten our 10th plate, so that saucer gave us a more or less all expenses paid trip to the Great American Beer Festival in Denver a few years ago. We have fun going and drinking beer with our friends, and that's what we do. And it kind of sucked that it was closed down except for delivery during the pandemic. But I guess it opened up the ability of these places to sell beer to go, which was kind of cool. And I think that's staying. I don't think, despite Texas's sometimes to me oppressive beer laws, they're going to stay with the ability to have and order beer to go, which is great. Yeah, obviously you can't have open containers while you're driving or anything like that, but it's kind of cool that something maybe positive has come out of the pandemic. So what type of beer do I like? I guess I should tell my listeners. I am a fan of IPAs and high alcohol adjunct stouts, but sometimes, I want a good solid Pilsner. I think that's my favorite, like, crushable go-to style. But I am also, like I said, a big IPA fan. And I don't know, I like the good new West Coast IPAs that aren't like pucker up hoppy, have been really nice. So I think that's what I'm drinking now. And now we get into summer, we get into like fruity beers and gosas, with the occasional like session stout, low alcohol stouts, dry Irish stout types. But I'll stick with my Pilsner, I think, during the summer. And maybe a lager or two.
Hey Carl, Jason here. Enjoying your podcasts. Cheddar coffee, is that related to the famous macaroni and cheese Cheddar Goblin? You remember the Cheddar Goblin macaroni and cheese, don't you, Carl? As far as whether he should be a Deep One hybrid or not, I mean, of course, it's a Call of Cthulhu game. Well, why would you not do that? Or at least he should be convinced that he's going to, whether he is or not. Maybe only you know the truth. But even if he's not, you should definitely lead him on for like a dozen adventures thinking that he is going to turn into one. Just my thought as a player, GM, and dad.
Jason, my friend, it wasn't cheddar coffee, it was Goblin Gulp coffee. But I guess there's a goblin involved. Cheddar Goblin, from one of Nick Cage's movies, a commercial where the goblin vomited. I vaguely remember it, but I honestly don't remember. All I know is Nicolas Cage was in the movie. I don't remember the movie, but movies are your thing. Anyway, thank you for another call-in. Just to clarify, Goblin Gulp Coffee is done by Geek Grind Coffee House. They do medium and dark roast coffee and coffee blends, beans or ground. And I guess they have a contract or licensing with Paizo, Pathfinder, and they're like themed that way, which is pretty fun. So it's Geek Grind Coffee House. I think the coffees have been pretty good, and people have liked them.
Players messing with other players. I really think it depends on the dynamic, but with those players, or PCs messing with other PCs. So I've done this a little bit with other players in games, but I think it was kind of a mutual, we knew we're kind of messing around with each other, and it wasn't a big deal, where they would kind of joke back and forth, but it wasn't malicious, and it wasn't trying to screw the other person, or screw the other PC. So I think if they're out of their way to try to screw the PC, then that's a talk you need to have player to player. In the case of, the other PC killing the character that your PC was getting to surrender, maybe you give a warning or whatever, and then next time it happens, if your PC punches that PC, I don't know what PC versus PC looks like in those games, or, with those groups, but, at some point, if they're playing it up as, this is what my PC would do, then if your PC would, sock them in the jaw or whatever, then I guess that's where it goes, right? But again, maybe it's a player versus player conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably not going to worry about it until things probably reoccur this weekend. And then maybe before I take any action and do anything spontaneously, I would DM the GM and see, what's going on, because like I said before, hey, maybe that particular PC is built with certain hindrances. So it's like a disadd type of thing, and a model, and it's not really, usually they don't have a mechanical aspect, but there are basically strong suggestions for how your character should roleplay. So maybe that PC is built with certain hindrances that make it bloodthirsty, or doesn't take orders well, or something like that. So anyway, I'll figure it out. I am like one of my players told me this week, I'm kind of a drama queen sometimes. So maybe I do take things personal and overreact. But hey, that's what the podcast is for, right? To vent and voice my opinions and ask questions from the brain trust that is the Audio Dungeon Discord and associates, and see how to play and get to what Jason's always talking about. Jason Connerly and Jason Hobbs are always talking about playing your best game ever, right? We always want to get to that place, and I would say player versus player interaction is a big part of it, and you don't want to think that things are being done personally to you when we all have our preconceived notions and predilections, right? Right, so this week, like I said in the last podcast, I had both North Texas RPG Con virtually, and the yearly marathon run by Kevin Madison of Dungeon Musings podcast and Dungeon Musings actual play YouTube channel. So I think because of how many games that I played this week, we'll split up the recaps into the non-weekend games versus the games I played during the week. So I played 3 games this week. I ran a game of our weekly Iron Kingdoms 5e, and then I was on Thursday, I played, and I've never played this game before, The Hero's Journey, the second edition with Virtual RPG Con, or at the virtual North Texas RPG Con. And then Friday, I played in a game of Savage Sewer Creatures run by Arlen Walker of Live from Pellam's Wasteland. I was going to play in a Swords and Wizardry game, Mithras Tower by Bill Webb, but I just got caught up in doing stuff at home and decided to pass on that. There's like 8 other players, or 8 or 9 other players, and I don't think I would have been missed, but I did send a message to Mr. Webb to say I wasn't going to make it. So those are the games I ran or played, and I will now discuss them. All right, so Iron Kingdoms 5e, we continued the tale, or what we're playing through is Legacy of the Witchfire. So there are spoilers ahead for those of you who plan to play and or run. If you plan to run, well, that might help out. So last time we left, they had raided this warehouse of the Powder Rat gang, who had this plan that the characters had discovered to put explosives in various parts of the city to disrupt the Festival of the Long Night in Corvus, the city that they're based in. So we had another player join this time around who kind of caught up with the action. Since it's a mercenary company, we decided that this player, who is a Nis ranger planning to become a mage hunter, was out doing other mercenary business for their company. Their company, they decided, was called the Black Moth, and they had found like a charter strewn on a battlefield, I think from the Ebony Butterfly, and they decided to change it based on their more nighttime activities and as a homage to the Ebony Butterfly, to the Black Moth. So that's their mercenary company, the Black Moth Mercenary Company. So we started off, in sort of the drink house, ale house attached to the precinct, where they're right now assigned to help out to bolster the police forces for the Festival of the Long Night in Corvus. They had some friends that were constables already because they shed blood and beat the heads out of ne'er-do-wells together. But there are other constables who were taunting them. Maybe they were a bit prejudiced of the diversity of species in their group and the diversity of ethnicities in their group. They were taunting them. So we did a bar fight, and I decided to take a page from Savage Worlds and do it more of a dramatic task or a skill challenge. And I had like a certain amount of successes I wanted outlined versus failures. I guess 4E D&D did this really well too. So we did that, and I had the characters describe what they wanted to do, whether they dove into it and fought, or like try to jump onto the rafters and smash guys or tackle guys, or just, as a couple players did, just sit it out. So they would use their notice or acrobatics to dodge the attacks or whatever. So the funnest things that happened, and the characters did succeed. I ran it for a couple rounds until I think the characters ended up doing the same thing. So I said, I guess they're not. Some of them were like, eh. So we'll see. we'll see if we continue to do dramatic tasks or skill challenges. But I think the coolest thing a character did, the two cool things I thought happened was one character tried to jump to the rafters and basically swing and smack a guy in the face with a leg whip or something, and totally flubbed it. Fell on top of him. There was a wrestling match, then spun him over in the next round, and then kind of sat on top of him. And since the NPC was commenting on the androgynous nature of this particular character, the character gave him a kiss, and that kind of stopped the fighting. It was pretty interesting. The other thing someone did is one of the duelists in the group, he basically started pantsing people, so like slashing at their belt so that their pants would fall down, throwing like towels over their head or whatever was available, ale in their face to do so. So it was pretty fun. The warcaster, the one who controls the Jack, did not have the Jack get involved. Remembering in the last adventure where the Jack just like crushed heads, that would not be good for a non-lethal bar fight. And the players, got into it, I guess, in the end. And no one was really hurt. So after that, or after the bar fight, or I don't know, I can't remember honestly the chronology. Maybe it was before the bar fight. They were visited by one of the nuns who had taken away the crazed Alexia Cianor, and they found out information that her another sister in the convent or in the Church of Morrow had let some of these bandits come in, led by a goblin named Scuzz, who they had learned about was now an enemy of the Powder Rat gang in their previous encounters with the Powder Rats, and had helped them steal the Witchfire. So they had a lead. So the next day after the fight, after recovering, they went to go track down Scuzz at his hideout. And it was this time it wasn't a skill challenge or dramatic task that I had outlined like I did the bar fight, but an actual skill challenge that was in the written into the adventure, which was basically to navigate the trips and tracks and highways and byways of the abandoned warehouse that Scuzz had as his base, to try to meet with Scuzz. And it was kind of a test by the goblin to see if they were competent or worthy. The players succeeded. The only mishap was one player failed and then got launched into I think what I had to do, I made it like a board of spikes, and he got jacked up pretty bad, but survived. They met with Scuzz, and then after some negotiation, which I just let the characters do what they do best, the players, some of the players love the talking part and the role playing. So with no roles, I let them negotiate and talk to Scuzz, and they actually basically hit the right bullet points outlined under his characteristics of what he would do or how he would negotiate with them to track down the Witchfire. So they convinced him by putting in a good word with the Watch, because he was wanted for other things, smuggling among other things, and destruction, working with the Powder Rat gang. So they said, we'll put in a good word for the Watch. And then Scuzz decided to lead them guide them to the Witchfire, to where he had dropped off the Witchfire for an unknown employer. And they could take two paths: the high road, where they would run into a lot of Powder Rat gangers and smugglers, or the low road, which they would not run into as many people and it'd be more discreet, but there could be monsters. So they decided the low road. And the only encounter we got through, although Scuzz as a guide gave them advantage on certain types of rolls. So they found this underground abandoned bell tower, and I imagine Corvus, like many European cities, the one that comes to mind is Edinburgh, where there's a city underneath the city because the buildings sink into the peat. So there's like people living underground, essentially in Corvus. and this is even more ancient, maybe than Edinburgh, based on the timeline of the world, right? So they go to this abandoned bell tower, and Scud says, "Okay, we just got to climb down. Everyone, be quiet." Of course, someone fails a roll and makes some noise, and I had the swarm of razor bats come down, and I think the characters, seeing that it was a swarm, and I gave them the option that they didn't have to fight the swarm necessarily; they just had to get out of the bell tower. So most of the players decided to climb down the bell tower. Some took some damage, and eventually, when they got to the bottom, they realized or remembered that they had scatter guns, which are basically shotguns, and they fired upon the bats enough to, well, they didn't destroy the swarm necessarily, but they weakened it enough that it was a lot easier to get down to the bottom of the bell tower, through the door, down the stairs, close the door so the bats can't follow. And that's where we stopped. We'll pick it up again on Wednesday. And with this group, I want to continue the Iron Kingdoms on Wednesday weekly if we can, but this is the same group where we're going to play a bi-weekly Warhammer Fantasy role-playing, the 4th edition live. We're going to start the Enemy Within campaign. So I don't know if we're going to, like, Wednesday one week, Thursday one, another week. So Wednesday on the Roll20 and then Thursday live. I don't know yet. So we'll find that out. So sorry, all. I'm not doing the singing today. I want to get this podcast out, and I have like a pain in my neck that's giving me a headache. So no singing. Sorry. So the next game I played was an adventure using the Hero's Journey 2nd edition rules by Spahn. And I believe it's a published adventure, so I'm just going to give impressions of the game and the game system, so since it's the first time I've played. And the adventure is called The Curse of Cormac's Hollow. And I'd heard that the Hero's Journey would give you a Lord of the Rings vibe, and I would say that it was more of a, at least in this particular game, it was more of a fairy tale, Chronicles of Narnia vibe. So, and I think it did a great job for that. There are some mechanics, like the mechanic of journeying and travel, and the mechanic of being able to sit by the fire to give you some inspiration, that I thought was really well. And it seemed the basic layout was less like 5e and more like an older game like BX or AD&D, and I would say even more like BX, because I played, well, you could choose your species and then class, so I guess more like AD&D, but I guess the way that the roles went was more like a BX or even Beckme feel, where you have if you have a skill, you roll under, but there was like a one score, like honestly, like I guess it's like DCC, one score for your saving throw. Actually, also like Astonishing Swordsman and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. You have one stat for your saving throw, or one number for your saving throw, and it can be modified by different circumstances based on class or species. So that was, and the gameplay was really fun. We had some really good players who made some cool, I think, role-playing choices to successfully complete the adventure. The GM was Noah Green, who has some writing credit on the adventure. I don't know if he has a podcast or YouTube. I can maybe look. Anyway, he admittedly said he was new to the OSR movement and had just started replaying these games after a long hiatus, like many of us. And I think he did a fantastic job. I really enjoyed my experience at Virtual North Texas RPG Con. I hope to go there next year live and play a lot of fun games. They have some neat people that go there. I met Jeff Easley, Larry Elmore, and played in a game run by Zeb Cook, and they signed or Jeff Easley and Zeb Cook signed my Oriental Adventures copy, which is pretty cool. So North Texas RPG Con, I recommend it. And I guess I did like the hero's journey. I would like to try more of that feel of game where it seems like less emphasis on the murder hobo and more emphasis on the story and the fairy tale like nature of the tale, which I think is part and parcel with Narnia and Middle Earth game set in there and tales set in there. The last game I'm going to talk about is Savage Sewers, which was run by Arlen Walker of Live from Pellam's Wasteland. And this game uses the Savage Worlds rules, and we are anthropomorphic animal hybrids who live in the sewers. So you can probably guess what the inspiration is taken from. And I play this giant alligator hybrid. So in this game, it was relatively short. We basically did a dramatic task to track down one of our leads from the last adventure where we got our butts kicked by a bunch of ninja robots and the big boss ninja. He took off it, and we, after I guess we had damaged or destroyed all the ninja robots, but he beat us up pretty bad. But we were short at least one, maybe two people. I think it was just the two of us. I think it was just myself and Shea Webster's character. So maybe the GM felt sorry for us. So he had the big bad flee or leave. Maybe we had disrupted enough that he didn't want to deal with us. Maybe we were below his notice, but he wanted to teach us a lesson. Anyway, and this part we had 3 people this time. So myself, Shay, and Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast. And in this game, we tried to track down the source of the ninja robots. And with our contacts, Ricky Bobby, the crazy conspiracy theorist human that we deal with, and Trash Master Flash, who is our raccoon anthropomorphic DJ. They helped us to find and create like a little device to track down the signal of the ninja robots. We actually found some ninja robot parts and took apart the head and found a transmitter. All this was done with the dramatic task mechanic that Savage World has. So we would figure out the narrative, propose it to the GM, and then make a roll with a negotiated skill. Which I guess there are pros and cons of that. It does seem sometimes a little meta, but it works. I like the dramatic task mechanic. So after that, we found the warehouse where there were robots being created, and we fought a bunch of robots. And I mean, the crazy thing is like usually when Arlen rolls, we roll on the roll 20. When Arlen rolls, he will get past the big toughness of the alligator and force him to go berserk. But that never happened, even though Brody, who's my alligator man, was ganged up on by at least four people. I did take the edge block, which reduces the benefit that gang ups get on you. And I think it increases your toughness or your parry at least. So Arlen was rolling poorly. We were rolling poorly at first, and then eventually we got the upper hand. There was one funny incident where Jason's character was trying to shut down the robot making machine, and he rolled a critical failure. So another robot popped out, and this one was like a prototype that had a laser gun at the head. So yeah, it was really fun. This great group of guys that we play with in a very enjoyable, if not short session. So I think the next time we play, we will finally find the location of the big bad and try to deal with them if we're all there. So that's it for, I guess, RPG content and some call-ins. I have one last segment, but if you like to shy away from non-RPG and somewhat controversial topics or statements, then I would suggest that you just wait until the next time. I think the next time is going to be a Savage Worlds special. I might talk about the mechanics and the pros and cons of the game and why I like the game, since basically every game that I'm playing this weekend is going to be Savage Worlds. We're running the Savage Worlds Iron Gods Savage Pathfinder Marathon that Kevin Madison from Dungeon Musings is running, and I'm also running a live Deadlands using the Savage Worlds rule set game on Sunday, so it'll be all Savage all the time. Giving a short disclaimer about some of the content in today's podcast. I'm continuing my discussion with Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast, about Memorial Day, and I talk about something else that could be potentially politically incendiary. So if you want to skip that section, it's the one that says Band of Brothers and Tulsa documentary. So you can skip that if you don't want to hear about it. Or if you want to join in, hey, that's great. I love discussions with open-minded people about controversial subjects.
Hey, Carl, that's how I've always looked at Memorial Day myself. Memorial Days where we go ahead and honor our fallen, and Veterans Days where you celebrate those that have served and are still around. Well, both those are gone and are still around, but primarily the ones that are still around. I'll talk about Memorial Day. I've got a buddy that not died in action, but died in the service that over Memorial Day that I celebrate every year, and I'll talk about that over my podcast. But no, definitely appreciate it.
Yes, I'm actually doing pretty good on my week-long pilgrimage into watching Band of Brothers. I've watched, like I reported last time, I watched Kurahi and Day of Days, but now I've been able to watch Karen Tan, and then Replacements, and then after Replacements is Crossroads, then Bastogne, and I just finished watching Breaking Point, which was a fantastic study in leadership and being a leader when you're not called a leader, but acting like a leader. It's pretty neat episode where Donnie Wahlberg, who plays First Sergeant Lipton, basically has to take the leadership role because of the shortcomings of the company CO. And at the end, the person who takes over the CO ship of Easy Company tells him, well, they had a leader all along, and First Sergeant Lipton doesn't even realize that it's him. And this company CO, Lieutenant Spears, says, well, yeah, it was you all along, First Sergeant Lipton. So it's pretty neat. It's narrated by Donnie Wahlberg, who also used to be on New Kids on the Block, right? Which is pretty funny that he went from New Kids to Band of Brothers and other things. Guess that's the way careers go sometimes, huh? Singer to actor to singer to I don't know what he's doing now. All right. So another program I watched was a documentary that this week was a documentary on the History Channel on the Tulsa City Massacre, which happened on May 31st in 1921. So it's basically like the 100th anniversary of this greatest, I guess, race-related massacre in the history of the U.S., where over 300 or so African Americans were killed and 10,000 of them were displaced when basically an armed militia destroyed 40 blocks of the district of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma back then. And they used military-type tactics and weaponry and even World War I airplanes where they dropped incendiaries onto the homes. The sad thing is, I honestly never knew about this incident. We were never taught. I grew up in Texas. We were never taught about this incident or many things really about race relations and massacres and riots and protests. I learned a lot of this in college, but I actually still didn't know about the Tulsa City, Oklahoma massacre. And sadly, I didn't learn about it really until 2 programs showed it. Watchmen, the series on HBO, and also Lovecraft Country on HBO these past couple of years. And then I read about it and learned about it, and I'm glad that they put out this documentary. Interestingly, this documentary was also, one of the executive producers was Russell Westbrook. Yes, that Russell Westbrook, who holds the current NBA record for the number of triple doubles in the league. He used to play for the Oklahoma Thunder, and now I think he's playing for Washington, the Wizards. But hey, we always complain about athletes who have this big platform and big stage not doing something socially relevant, but this man is trying, and I give him a lot of props for it. Pretty neat.